Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast, your home for all things Chelsea FC. Nick, Dan, and myself cover all the match reviews from the latest Chelsea matches. We cover the team news and even throw you some exclusive interviews. Thank you already for being an awesome listener, and you know what? Let's jump right in. All right, Chelsea fans, we are back, as we said, with another episode of the London is Blue podcast. Joining me, as always, are Dan and Nick, my co-hosts. Dan, did you actually watch Chelsea on yet a different coast this season, this last weekend?
It was the East Coast this week, Brandon, and I would say that I watched Chelsea, but I also got a chance to witness the wonderment of Wolves and West Ham, Nick, and I know that was for a little bit of time was almost more enjoyable than the Chelsea match.
I would disagree. From what I saw of Wolves and West Ham, it was as dire as it sounds, and frankly, West Ham are just god awful. I mean, they're terrible. But yeah, thanks to NBC or IMG or whoever is responsible for that feed, we ended up seeing about 15 minutes of of Wolves and West Ham, and dear God, was that not good. Luckily, a couple of the guys in my pub were resourceful and found a Spanish feed for the Chelsea match, so we ended up watching 15 minutes on a cell phone. Brandon, it was not ideal, but we did it.
All right. Well, Nick, I'm sure you and the group are all fluent in Spanish and probably didn't miss a beat. But to go ahead and round out our cast for today, we do have a guest. We have Amity from the Carefree Blues Pod joining us. Obviously, you guys know Amity's been a guest. He was a feature on our racism pods and some other projects we've done. So, again, welcome back, Amity.
Thanks for having me on again, fellas. It's always a pleasure.
Nice. We're looking forward to break down the Bournemouth match with you, obviously, today, everybody. But before we get into that, we do have a ton more iTunes reviews, Dan. These are literally flooding in every week.
Dropping out of the sky, Brandon. Dropping out of the sky like droplets of water in a rainstorm. We are just absolutely being flooded with reviews. One from Christopher Bryson from Sweden, giving us a little international dap. We appreciate that. Jay Atkins 2, Chicky Chicky Boom Boom, not Chicky Chicky Parm Parm. And then Sar Arte California and Wishworn. No questions this week, though. No one snuck in a question. Just gave a little 5-star love, which we absolutely appreciate. Get a shout at the beginning of the podcast. Very easy to do. Just leave that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll hit you up.
We appreciate that as always, and we do have some new Patron names. A shout out to Brett. He did mention about the Dallas Blues who have passed away. So his message, from Brett, who actually increased his donation, says, "I really enjoy listening to you guys each and every week, so the pleasure is all mine. I consider our American Chelsea presence to be one big family, and each and every time I step into the pub or run into another Chelsea fan, I know it's always a family type situation for me." Just kind of goes on to talk about how, he often connects with people on Facebook, whether it's a quick line or something. It's really cool that kind of have that family and everyone around. And that, he also would like me to shout out how Chelsea, or that we may have heard in the Shed in Dallas lost 2 of their members this past week. So our hearts are mourning with their losses. Obviously, without getting into details, BJ and the team down there and everyone, we just want to, kind of give our special love to you guys that you have lost 2 members. And for all of you listening, it's obviously, important for us as one big family to, kind of keep them, in your thoughts and prayers and know that any extra love you can send their way, they would definitely appreciate it. And he signs off, as always, with keep the blue flag flying high. So again, a little bit more of a serious start to the pod, but definitely important and well worth taking out time to remember and shout out those members down in Texas. Kind of transitioning it a little bit now, Nick. We now have an open invitation to go to Denmark. How about that?
That's right. Thomas Lundberg, who is we've produced a video with, or one video with, or 2, depending on when you see these come out. He has opened his home, or opened his pub, or his pub/home to us to do a podcast. 2 hours free beer and a traditional Danish smørbrød. I don't know how to say
A
that.
smorgasbord would be the way to probably pronounce that.
Sure.
Nicholas.
And okay, Dan, I know that you've been taking your Danish lessons, so they're really paying off now, and that's great.
Donkey.
Thomas is great. Joe Tweeds lives in Copenhagen. This is something we got to do, boys. And it sounds like Copenhagen's our next big stop.
Add it to the list, Mr. Worldwide. That's what our goal is. All right, let's go ahead and kind of reframe our minds, transition back to thinking Bournemouth. I guess real quick though, Nick, we do have a quick shout out. Our promo code is back for all of those looking to get the new kits for this season.
Yeah. So quickly, we have extended part of our agreement with World Soccer Shop to continue our promo code through the end of the season. We won't talk about it a ton on the show moving forward. And at the end of the day, you just kind of have this in the back of your mind. But we have 10% off of your orders using the code LondonPod through the end of the year. Use that for customization, to knock off that cost, or free shipping, or any other stuff you want to add to your order. Take advantage of the savings. We will occasionally be posting on our social channels about World Soccer Shop and perhaps a kick giveaway or something like that. So be on the lookout. But you know that you can use London Pod now through the end of the year. Do it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the thick of it with the AFC Bournemouth match review. It was in the Premier League, and it was at Stamford Bridge this past Saturday, August 31st. Blues 2, Cherries 0. Now, Amity, I am not sure if you are big on match predictions, but did you make one by chance?
Actually, I didn't make one that I posted online. I was just hoping that we would get a good 2-goal cushion. I didn't care if that was a 3-1 or 2-0 win, but it looked like we managed to hold out for the clean sheet, which I think is important for Kepa.
Oh, big time. I'm not even sure if Kepa played, but whoever was in goal, it was good to get that. And yes, why I ask, Amity, is because, as you can annoyingly hear, we did have quite a few correct predictions. Nick somehow pulling out of his backside a second week in a row. Nick,
that's right, baby.
Who are you paying for predictions?
I have my own sources that I will leave unnamed, but I'm happy to be back on the winning side. I don't think I've had one in like 2 years.
You and Lee Mason, man.
2 weeks.
You and Lee Mason.
Yep. So blind squirrel finds nut for the second time, Brandon, as you so eloquently pointed out last week. So look, guys, if you need advice, if anyone wants to come into the house of Verlaine for any of their betting needs, please step in. I'm here.
Well, the good news is you are not alone. We had Daniel and Philip from Facebook, and we had Talk Chelsea, Clayton _CFC, M608D, Izat, Alex _Ocampo 26, D Roof Tagi 03, and J Connolly 2003, all nailing it on Instagram. You guys, that was a huge round of you that are getting it right. Make sure to keep throwing out your predictions. And keep it going, because apparently it's just anyone can get it right.
Quick shout out to Mike's 5-1 prediction.
Yeah, that was a thing that was there, but we're probably not going to keep going into that one anymore. But Nick, you did have a question from the Knoxville Chelsea saying, how does Nick feel about having more correct score predictions than West Ham has points?
Oh, I like that. That's witty and also factually correct. West Ham is terrible. If you got to see the 15 minutes that we did, it's not great, and they are going to really struggle.
Indeed. All right, Dan, let us go through the lineup for this match. 4-3-3, obviously, is Sarri has said. That is the only formation he knows how to play.
That is correct. We did see Kepa in goal. I know that you questioned that, Brandon, but it was in fact Kepa. We saw Rudiger and Luis paired together centrally in the defense with Alonso and Luis on the sides. You saw Jorginho, Kanté, and Kovacic in the midfield three, and then you saw Hazard, Morata, and Willian starting. Even after Pedro had a great performance the last game, he does come in off the bench as a substitute along with Giroud, and then Ruben Loftus-Cheek also makes an appearance. Ross Barkley, Christensen, Zappacosta, and Caballero round out the subs. So pretty much the lineup people would have expected outside of maybe Pedro starting.
Yeah, I mean, he's keeping it fresh. He's keeping us on our toes a little bit, Amity. From your standpoint, which I think this is interesting. Sarri is very open about his subs bench and exactly why he has who he has on them. He is kind of trading Pedro and Willian, probably trying to feel that out a little bit, see if there's any kind of switches. But otherwise than that, I think we've already seen that the midfield three is locked down.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's key for Sarri's team. I mean, obviously, with the addition of Jorginho to this Chelsea side, everybody expected him to be influential, and he's been nothing short of it. However, the transition, I guess, between Pedro and Willian, even though I think Pedro's gotten the more of the favoritism early on this season, I think it's good. I think that's a good place to be making changes, and also because I think the shape of the team might not be as affected as far as returning to face our own goal defensively. However, I think bringing on Pedro or Willian late in the game is going to be effective, as there's, especially I think Pedro, he's very attack-minded and he's quick enough to really upset some defenses who have put in 60 or 70 minutes under their belt. So that addition, whether it's Pedro or Willian, as I said, I think it's a positive one. And I still think Pedro deserves to start over Willian so far because his offensive contribution is, 3 goals in 4 games. So, yeah. I think that's a good thing. I think that he keeps switching it up is going to make both of them be motivated to get the start. And I think that, no offense to Willian, but I think that Pedro's kind of edging him out where we stand now.
Maybe that 2-year contract by the club this last summer for Pedro turning out to look like smart business all of a sudden?
Oh, I think so for sure. And I think he's been reinvigorated. I think a lot of the players we're looking at this season have been reinvigorated because it's almost like having a fresh start, new manager, new system. It's almost like you got a new lease on life. And I think that both of them, Pedro and Willian, have embraced that. I'm not saying that they can't improve, both of them, but I think that there's a sense that, hey, look what I can do, coach. Keep me in or put me in. Look what he's not doing that I can. It's good competition in that position. And I don't think either of them is going to beat out Hazard for the starting spot now that he's fit.
Nah, I wouldn't expect that. Some top-line stats, obviously, Chelsea was 72% possession, which is still funny to me to hear. 6 shots on target based off of 24 total shots, 892 touches, 704 passes. Chelsea have more passes than Bournemouth have touches. Just saying. And then if you go from there, it's some fouls and some yellow cards, yada, yada, yada. My mans, we've got some goals. So, Dan, we had to wait, right? Chelsea are coming up with the goods, but they're making us sweat it out until the 72nd minute this time. Pedro, as Amadou just talked about, on the goal scoring sheet, assist to one Giroud.
And a bargain of fantasy points in Fantasy Premier League if you were willing to take the gamble on Pedro. Even though he didn't start the game, it still comes out with a bit of a banger there. And took the shot from outside the box, which we know we all love. Maybe a little bit of some nice guidance with a touch here or there. But Giroud obviously changes the game, holds the ball up a little bit more, and gives Pedro that opportunity to do what he does best, which is just shoot. And shoot from a little bit outside the boot there. So definitely a nice goal to see. Happy to have him as a Fantasy Premier League player and happy that he's wearing Chelsea blue.
All right, all easy things that we can agree with. I think Nick, 85th minute, Eden Hazard sealing the deal assist, our 4th striker, Marcos Alonso.
Maybe our first choice striker moving forward. This was just, it was a little piece of magic. I think that both players had seen a lot of action in and around the box during the previous 84 minutes. This was a brilliant piece of interchange that was kind of a give and go action, and then Hazard with a rocket that just there was no stopping getting into the far corner. So just a brilliant goal. I think the fans went ballistic. I think everyone is rooting for Hazard to have the type of season that we know he's had before and that he's capable of having, maybe even contributing a little bit more from a goal scoring standpoint. So this was just it's just kind of a beautiful moment, and you got the mini Didier celebration at the end, and it just makes everyone happy.
Lots of smiles. Now, Dan, I know you aren't maybe best known for your score predictions, but apparently you do like to tweet slight predictions, maybe foreshadowing, you could almost call it, with this tweet saying, bringing on Giroud and Pedro will give Chelsea the height and outside the box shot we've been missing so far. Hopefully it leads to the opening goal. Yeah, I guess you're right. You called it.
And a brilliant Jeff Goldblum gif, if I may add so.
You're welcome. There were a fair number of Jeff Goldblum gifs the other day, and they were seemingly very well received, which I appreciate.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about something that I've been starting to notice a little bit, Nick, and I want to know if anyone else thinks it's weird that at this point of the season, obviously with the new manager, I do expect the first half to be tight of all of these matches with Chelsea. It just seems like Chelsea don't really dominate the first half for whatever reason. And then come the 60th minute, usually coinciding with substitutions, as Dan foreshadowed in his tweet before, Chelsea just come alive and take control. And, maybe it's because of the strength of our bench. Maybe it's because of the style in which we play with the high press. It takes about 60 minutes to grind down some of these teams to where they're exhausted. But to me, it just seems like that's it. I expect Chelsea to struggle or not really come up with anything until after the 60th minute.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this will change as the season goes on and players become more comfortable. And I think with any Premier League match, there's always a little bit of tightness, in terms of, tactics and how, aggressive both teams are going to play. I mean, typically, you'll see an away team kind of bunker down and want to survive the first 20 minutes of a match as to not, get smoked completely. I think that Chelsea grow into the game, unlike maybe last year where, we kind of faded a little bit towards the end. And you're seeing really clutch moments. You're seeing goals, late in the 72nd, 85th minute. You're seeing, a really, kind of ballistic end to the Newcastle game, 76th and 87th. I mean, these are all, really good signs to me that, this team is confident that, no matter what happens, even a ridiculous goal that Newcastle got the week prior, that they can go and get the winner. And, I think over time you're going to see the goals spread out a little bit, but I also, think, Amity, that, when Maurizio makes a change, it's, I think there is some real kind of invention in the team, or maybe a little bit of extra fire that gets put behind the guys to do something.
Yeah, and I kind of want to echo what both of you were saying. I think there's half of it is the passing. I mean, if we're breaking down teams, whether they're having to run a lot or even just a little bit and kind of track back between two players, getting 81% possession, 82% possession, and ending up with 76, that's indicating that a lot of running is being done by the opposing team, whether they're getting a touch on the ball or not, whether they're staying compact, keeping 11 players behind the ball. It's a grueling thing to try to stay in a game where you're not seeing the ball very often. So when it does come time for changes, and Chelsea can afford to bring on players like RLC or a Willian for a Pedro or vice versa, or a couple games Hazard didn't start and he came in and made an immediate impact. So it's the idea there is, yes, teams are getting broken down, and Chelsea's, the ability to pull quality players off of the bench is, and also kind of a variation. I think you mentioned how Giroud was coming on. We'll get a little bit of height. We can play the longer ball, have a target striker, and we can also have someone to kind of play in that space just below him to get those balls that he knocks down. I think the variation in style in the final third, and simply the fact that we have that much possession, really just breaks a team down. And it's almost like it's a matter of time playing with such an offensive system and a high press that we would eventually get a good look. But I do want to say that a lot of that has to do with the quick understanding, I think, in particular, of our defensive wide players. Azpilicueta has not made as many forward forays as he would have in the 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 system under Conte. But I like that when Alonso pushes up, there's almost a line of three center backs with a little bit of a movement forward for Azpilicueta if he's making a run or receiving the pass to alleviate pressure. But I like that people still have an idea of their role. And also, if Alonso continues to move forward and be as effective offensively as he has been, I want to see it more and more. I mean, I think it's a big problem for opposing teams. And it has yet to really kind of kick us in the back that he's been caught too high upfield. So, I mean, yes, that's a danger, but I like the way that we sort of manage those spaces, and also the ability to really hunker down in the opposing team's defensive third and kind of keep them in there. But eventually those things will kind of become second nature, and I think we're going to see an even more impressive team in the second half. Maybe not so late, but...
Well, you even saw the fact that, versus the game that we saw against Newcastle, where we really didn't have the width on either side. You have Alonso even floating into the center of the pitch. Both Azpilicueta and Alonso pushed far enough forward that once we got through that first 15, 20-minute spell where Bournemouth were trying to man mark, made very narrow passing lanes, that we were comfortable enough to push extremely far up. Really relied on Luis and Rudiger to cover any type of long ball back or counterattack, and it gave them the width that we were missing against that Newcastle match. And it really was more down to the fact that we weren't taking the right type of shot, or were kind of unlucky, off the bar maybe, and maybe just a little shy of target. And we could have scored goals in that first half or before those other two players came on, because we were finding the right bits of space. And it only just got better when we brought on Pedro, who seems to be more accustomed to this. And we saw, I think, the benefit as well of Giroud in this particular battle with the amount of crosses that we were whipping in. I mean, it was over 20 crosses this game, where you benefit from his height in the box, being able to be someone who's going to draw defenders in versus being someone like Morata, who's looking more for kind of a perfect one-on-one matchup.
To me, something that kind of stands out with this a little bit, not necessarily the personnel, but Chelsea have scored after the 80th minute in our first four matches. I think that is awesome, because to me that says that, even with Huddersfield, at that point you were up 2-0. Chelsea are still hungry. They are still looking for goals, pushing the entire game. Obviously, Arsenal, the 81st minute was the match winner, so that was highly important. Newcastle scored in the 76th and 87th minute, and Bournemouth the 72nd and 85th. So again, just the fact that our, this team and the mentality is to, never push. I know, Nick, that has been a huge frustration you've had even under Antonio Conte. At times, the team just kind of let their foot off the brake, and the games really just kind of, whimper out, and there's no real drive to push on and get goals 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that will go away under Maurizio Sarri. I think that he will want his teams playing 100% as fast as they possibly can, all the way until the final whistle. So again, just an observation, that I had, and I think that you guys kind of talked to. It's also a testament to how strong our bench is, this season, which is weird because we didn't sign too many players, but even just the minor tweaks that we have had. Now it seems like every time we go to the bench, bringing in a Willian or a Pedro or a Giroud or a Ruben Loftus-Cheek or whoever, it's just, you have essentially someone who could have started in almost all three of those positions, which I think is really cool. So before we go to the next question, I guess, Dan, we did want to selfishly plug our Patreon that we do have, because it's pretty cool and it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a way to help support the show. Obviously, we will do most of this for absolutely nothing, and you don't have to go to Patreon and give us $1 or $2 or whatever you'd like to help support the show, but we use it to defer some of the costs. We do it to, take care of the hosting or the things of that nature, and produce more awesome content. And, you get first in line access to ask some of the questions, which I think benefited a few of our wonderful Patreon subscribers who got to be the individuals whose questions we asked of Matt Law on the second episode they'll be dropping this week. So there's a value to it too. And we are definitely looking at doing some more stuff with it this season in regards to specific access to content recording or things of that nature. So keep your eyes posted and throw us a little love there. It's patreon.com, and I believe it's /London is Blue podcast.
London Blue Pod.
London
Keep
Blue
it simple.
Pod. Okay, there you go.
All right, so the next one I want to talk about, Dan, and I am going to circle back to you, is the resident Alonso hater. I mean, that's just obviously what we all know you as. Why do you hate Marcos Alonso? And is it because he's consistently scoring goals and providing assists? Does that frustrate you about him?
Yeah, because I'm the one who was calling for Emerson for weeks and weeks banging the drum.
Yeah, this is called
for the Brazilian Italian.
Deflecting and rewriting my own history. So yeah,
you definitely are rewriting your narrative right now, and I appreciate that you're a big enough of a man to say that you were wrong and put that out there on social. And you know what? I think there has been a lot of undue hate towards Alonso, and I think a lot of it surfaces because of his past and an incident that occurred in Spain that is horrific and terrible, and we'll go into depth in here. But everyone wants to lambast him for some reason, and I get it, right? But here's the thing. Chelsea have won 4 games in a row under a brand new manager while implementing a new system, while learning new roles and having a general on the pitch in Jorginho who's telling you where you should pass the ball all the time. So you're probably thinking a little bit differently than you were previously. I can't do anything other than have great love and admiration for what Marcos Alonso is doing on the pitch right now for Chelsea. And I think that if this continues, and you'll hear Matt Law talk about this in another episode later this week, but there's not many better left backs in all of world football right now, depending upon what your qualifier is going to be. If you want to say Mendy, you could say Alessandro, you can look at, Marcelo, you can look at Alaba, you can look at, Jordi Alba. So, Alonso is in that grouping of players, and yet people still want to go say, well, why don't we go spend 50, 60, 70 million pounds on Alexandro Nick? And I just don't, that doesn't make sense to me anymore. We have a top left back in the league and in Europe. That's how our manager thinks about it. Our manager is known for helping to develop players defensively, like Koulibaly. I am thinking that Alonso will be one of the best or / most improved players under Sarri this season.
He is a ridiculous threat offensively right now. He is, we were looking for a midfield to provide goals. I mean, I still think that he kind of has a midfielder type mentality. So maybe that's, kind of from the wing back setup, kind of where he's coming from. But his positioning in the box when he's able to get forward is tremendous. His shot is obviously tremendous. He does, have some work to do defensively, just as everyone adapts to the system. But you could make that point about a lot of players. I mean, he's definitely surprised me. I really thought that he might have been a candidate to be moved on before the transfer window ended. And he's a guy that's just stepped up and kind of took his moments as they've been coming, and he's a guy that I think a lot of fans would want to be our starting striker given our output there right now. But until the the full defensive evolution is complete, I don't think it's really that fair to judge him or anyone right now on that side of the ball. But look for that to happen maybe around November time period, Amity, and see if we can get something mixed up there and a little bit more solid.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth noting that since this is from BBC's Match of the Day, since Alonso's debut in the Premier League, no defender has more goals or assists. He has 14 goals and 7 assists. The next defender on the list is also a Chelsea player. It's Cesar Azpilicueta with 3 goals and 11 assists. And I mean, Alonso's contribution is, as you said, if we can get that kind of production from a striker, we'd love it. And I get that people, tend to lambast him for, being cut out of position or being cut too high up the field. But if you don't think that our manager is instructing him to do so, then you're living in a fantasy world. However, Alonso can improve, I think. There's room for it, not only on his defensive contribution, but sometimes his awareness in the offensive third. Yes, he always ends up in a good position because that's how he's contributing on so many goals and assists. But there's a sense that he kind of lingers in those spaces a bit too long. And I get that he's going to improve, especially under Sarri. So this is only going to become a better thing. And I think his contributions will hopefully round out on the defensive side. But I understand that a lot of Chelsea fans, and whether you're a fan of Chelsea or not, have some people have really decided that Alonso isn't the kind of player we want. I don't know if it's because he's lanky or slower than most people think, but this contribution is kind of it serves to shut those naysayers up. And I don't know. I'd like to see more of his defensive contribution, but at the same time, you cannot discount what he's providing for us on the offensive end.
No, you cannot. And let me walk you through what he is contributing. So he is third with 1 goal this season. He is tied for first with 2 assists this season. He is also one of the 6 or 7, I think 6 field players that have played every single minute of this season. He has the 5th most passes in the team. He has the 2nd most touches in the team, which I think is pretty impressive. Oh, and by the way, he's hit the woodwork twice. So he very easily could be tied with Pedro on 3 goals this season if it weren't just for a bit of an unlucky bounce one way or the other. At BoyGoneFit on Twitter saying, is Marcos Alonso the Frank Lampard of left backs? Every game he ghosts into the box without being picked up and picking up vital goals and assists. Now, why this sounds really funny, I actually think that there's a lot of correctness in this, right? Like Lamps was known for always timing his runs into the box, coming in late, catching the defense not looking, and scoring the goals. And at least within the first 4 games, right? Like it's still a small sample, but it's a really high output in the small sample. Alonso is tending to do a lot of the same things, which is fantastic. Dan, do you want to even go through some of Sarri's post-match comments on Alonso after this match? I mean, he did not hold back his true feelings.
No, he was very positive, saying Alonso at the moment in this position at left back is maybe the best in Europe.
Stop it. Stop. Terrible.
His physical qualities are at a top level. I think he's doing very well in the offensive phase, but I also think he can improve in the defensive phase. If he improves that, he could be the best left back in the world, which is mighty praise. Did not take into account or mention the silly challenge he had out of bounds on a yellow card that could have had him seen potentially a 2nd yellow, that we will just slightly mention and say that is something that should be worked out of his game. But beyond that, awesome player.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. He did have a bit of a moment, a bit of a howler going a little crazy. Nick, I think it was Dan who literally Googled best left backs in the world. And Google came up with Marcelo, Dani Alves, Jordi Alba, Felipe Luis, Danny Rose, Marcos Alonso, Benjamin Mendy, Roberto Carlos, Ashley Cole, Alexandro, and I can't explain this, but it says Luke Shaw.
No. We're never. Yeah, I think Google had a mishap there. I think Roberto Carlos doesn't play anymore, so that's probably off the list. Although he's the GOAT. It's not a huge line in front of Marcos Alonso. I think he's clearly better than Danny Rose. I think Jordi Alba plays in a system that really benefits his kind of wing talent and his speed. Obviously Marcelo is incredible, and I think the comparisons between them getting forward and the types of offensive talent they have, or I think that Marcos Alonso might be a poor man's Marcelo in terms of getting forward, but still, if that's the barrier to entry, and I think Marcelo is probably, for my money, the best left back in the world. That's not a terrible place to be if you're Chelsea Football Club, to have a guy with kind of similar attributes. Maybe not as much speed, but certainly the ability on the ball is there. So I don't know, Amity, what you think, but I think we're in a pretty decent position here.
No, I fully agree, and I think that to get ahead of ourselves would be probably the worst thing we could do 4 games into the season. But
so that's exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But again, to me,
team of the season, he'll be in the team of the season. Don't worry,
Right.
Probably for all of Europe.
So
I mean,
look,
go ahead.
I would say just to reconstruct it. It's not the fact that I want to get ahead of ourselves. It's more about the conversation around Alonso that we've seen all season, and that he's still not good enough. So to me, my question, what I was trying to frame up before throwing Dan under the bus right away, was just that, is he deserving of more credit and respect than I just feel like a lot of fans are still giving him? And just because the sense of the stats and the production he's done as to this point, not saying he will be Premier League team of the season or anything crazy like that, but up to now, I think we should all stop calling for Emerson or for him to not be in the team or something crazy.
No, that's correct. All right, that's fair. I think that a lot of Chelsea fans look at Alonso as I was saying before, I don't know if it's because he's so lanky or because it's maybe something about his fluidity. He's kind of languid player, if you will. I don't think he's like the fastest on the ball. However, there's just like it's latent hate from last year. I think a lot of players, a lot of fans were pissed at all of the players on the team, all of them, not just Alonso. But he's an easy scapegoat. I mean, he's in a position where, yes, if he gets beaten, we're immediately under pressure. If he's out of position, we're under pressure. If he doesn't do his job on the offensive end, we don't necessarily have the same threat. He had a lot of responsibility playing in Conte's wingback system. That's just the way it is. He didn't necessarily meet all of those demands every time, but he still came through. The production, the numbers that I quoted before, that includes from the season he started with Conte. That doesn't mean that there weren't times when fans such as myself said, oh, come on, Alonso has to do better than that. But I think he's just been an easy scapegoat. This season, it's not been the same. I don't think he's had those sorts of exposed lapses. I can't think of one myself. I'm sure one of you guys will be able to point one out and refute this entire point, but I feel like he's managed to kind of play those out of his game, or maybe just playing in a back four is more, it's just a better designed system for him.
Well, I would also like to point out, how about from a style and a tactics standpoint, right? Like, yeah, he's probably not your English typical left back, real hard, stands on the halfway line and shuts down everyone that comes his way, right? Like an Ash Cole, like absolute shutdown defender, like nothing got by him. But what Alonso does, and like a lot of these top European teams are, they pin their opponents in their box, right? Like, I would much rather have our left backs running at the goal, shooting from distance, getting inside the six, scoring goals, than them just standing back. Because to me, this is a style play, and it's with Sarri getting involved and saying, no, I want us to take it to teams. I mean, how many times do we talk about being reactive and defensive with our the way we set up and went into games like this, and now we're able to have our defenders, even Azpilicueta, getting in and around the box and able to provide another threat. I think that for me, it's much more of Alonso doesn't defend well. Okay, but he attacks really well, and teams have to respect that, and they have to change their game around what Alonso brings to the table. So, I mean, Dan, I know that I've kind of, am trying to really, really push my new narrative in this point, but I also think that it's not only just Alonso having a great season, it's also Alonso doing a really, really good job under Maurizio Sarri's new style of play. And I think the fans overall really like this attacking on the front foot style of play.
Yeah, and I think we did receive some questions this week about, should Alonso potentially lace up his boots as a striker, and I don't necessarily think that's the right solution for where Alonso should be played on the pitch. I think that, he is developing as a left back, and you know what, I would rather have the threat he brings to the game in adding assists and goals on the wing, engaging with Hazard. They definitely seem to enjoy playing with one another. Even though Eden did come out saying that sometimes he has to tell Marcos to go back and not always just try to get ahead and try to go for a goal because his job is to be a defender. So that type of chemistry is good. But I would rather have Alonso on the wing and get a really, really top quality striker in there. So not only are you getting goals from up top, but you're contributing goals from the wings, you're contributing goals from your defenders. And that's when you know that everything is really gelling and operating at 100%. So yeah, I think he has benefited from the system like many players, but I think a lot of it also is his natural talent and abilities that really can't be questioned either.
Can I quickly say that latent hate is one of my favorite phrases of all time, Amity? I have to give you massive credit for that. I think there is a lot of carryover, and it's something that we're trying to do too, right? Something that Brandon, I think, even admits on this one topic that maybe some of our predispositions from last year are not accurate in the current, state of play. So, for example, I'm looking maybe at, my question heading into the year was if Cesar Azpilicueta was going to be able to adapt back to right back. So far so good, but there are a lot of different things out there that I think are just in flux and changing, and maybe that's a good way to phrase that is don't let latent hate kind of enter your periphery.
Yeah, and there's also the idea that, for us, we have high standards for our team. I mean, we support them week in, week out. We want the best for the club. We want these players, especially the new ones, to succeed. There's kind of the expectation of success regardless of the reality of the situation. Like whether we have to give Sarri time with the new players, we have to give players playing in a different system, new time. But as fans, we want immediate success. And I guess the latent hate is kind of our own way of dealing with how sometimes they don't match up to our expectations. I think Eden Hazard said it best when he recently left some quotes for Chelsea TV talking about how this season and last season is not so different. It's just that the players we've brought in, they're completely different. And I think Chelsea fans have a really high expectation for their club. Any fans for any club do. And that's just the reality. You want success, whether it's immediate or not. But I think that as fans, this latent hate is something that we kind of tend to deal with season to season, because if your team is struggling, if your manager isn't doing the best, if players are giving quotes to the media that kind of paint the team in a negative light, there's someone needing to be a scapegoat for a lot of the fans. And it was easy for that to be Alonso last season. And I think that letting go of that latent hate is something that we're all going to have to do as the team improves. But I think that there's also, as I said, the desire for immediate success. And if we don't get it, say we had finished the last 3-4 weeks, 2 games won, 2 draws, or maybe even 1 win, I think we'd be talking a lot differently about these players. So I think that we have to take it with a grain of salt, but also be a little bit realistic. Chelsea fans and any fans of any Premier League club want success, and might be a little bit maybe unrealistic about how they go about pursuing that.
Absolutely. Hashtag stop latent hate. We're doing it, guys. One issue at a time. All right, Amity, I'm going to keep it with you, actually, and I want to ask, what do you make of Chelsea's newfound possession this season? There's some doubters or maybe haters who complain Jorginho only passes 5 yards laterally and that possession is meaningless if you don't go forward. Chelsea have been having 60, 70, 80% possession consistently so far this season, and I don't know, what's your take on this new version of Chelsea's Sarri ball?
I think anybody who says that possession is meaningless unless it goes forward, I think that, as I was saying before, and anybody who's played the game will know, if you have to run back and forth between 2 players, whether they're 5 yards apart or 3 yards apart, you're going to get tired having to do that over and over. And you'll see it when we're playing teams. Jorginho will demand the ball off the center backs, they'll play it to him, and he'll give it right back. And the person who's guarding Jorginho, maybe whether it be the inverted forward, whether it's the center midfielder tucking in, or it doesn't really matter. They look back and forth and see that the ball is going to go back to Jorginho, and they stop running. It's a mental game. A lot of the time, if you see 2 players holding onto the ball, passing in an area where they can't be that dangerous, and if a team isn't employing a high press, they're going to let them have it. And I can understand how teams can say, well, Chelsea aren't doing much with the ball, let them have it there. But a player with the kind of vision that Jorginho has, and Kovacic included, even David Luiz and Rudiger can ping balls like that. So possession doesn't have to be forward-based or forward-focused in order to be effective. And furthermore, if the point of this is to kind of demoralize the other team who aren't seeing the ball, who are only running around, trying to get it back and then failing to do so, it plays on their mental game, then thinking, well, if we get the ball, we're even going to be able to do anything with it. They've been camped out in our box for the entire game. They don't seem troubled. I mean, it's demoralizing. Having played that way against quality teams, as a defender or as a player who wants to go forward and try to win the game offensively, if you don't see the ball, you're not going to be very pleased. And it plays on the entire team's mentality. I think that anybody saying that possession that doesn't necessarily go forward the entire time, I think they're just upset about it because they're not appreciating what this means for the entire team. It's a 90-minute game. It's very hard to run back and forth between 2 players who are only 5 or 10 yards apart and not see the ball.
As a goalkeeper, I agree. From the possession side, I'm sure it is tired chasing the ball around. I don't know personally. But Nick, as the armchair expert, I would say, of the podcast, you seeing the team really just kind of suffocate out these teams a little bit. I know it also invites teams to just sit back and defend right away because they're like, well, we're not going to get the ball, at midfield anyways. Might as well sit and wait for it. How do you think Chelsea are adapting with this, the newfound kind of like crazy amounts of possession we have?
I think we're adapting fine. I mean, we've been on the opposite side of this equation many times over the last few years, and you can tell by like the 60th, 65th, 70th minute that legs start to go. Mental, I think the bigger challenge is that the mental side of your game starts to maybe tire a little bit, and that's when mistakes can happen. So, I think part of the reason that you're seeing these late goals and you're seeing the amount of passes and possession and all these other things, I think Maurizio Sarri is confident that Chelsea, has the ability to wear teams down. I think he would like to see a faster, more vertical style of play than horizontal and side-to-side passing and all that stuff. But whatever gets the job done is what I care about. And you saw, especially early in this match against Bournemouth, a few over-the-top balls, and we haven't seen those for a couple of years now. To be fair, like there are a lot that were Morata just couldn't get on the end of, but I think there's some inroads being made with if the ball is passed side to side a few times, that Jorginho, N'Golo Kante, Kovacic are looking for the opportunity to play someone in behind on the ground or over the top. And that just, again, it takes such an incredible amount of mental, just accuracy and game that you have as an opposing defender, that, if you're content, if you're watching the ball go side to side and then it's over your head and there's nothing you can do about it, Chelsea's going to see some joy there for sure. So that's just an opinion from one guy, but, certainly, feel like Chelsea's making the right types of moves going forward.
Dan, do you want to weigh in on this a little bit?
It's been a pleasure to watch. I think it's been something that will continue to be exciting, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much possession and how much ball retention we can have going up against some of the more elite competition that will go up against this season. And I think it's going to be interesting because we're going to be progressing forward in our understanding of the system before we play a really crucial match here against Liverpool twice in the end of the month, once in the League Cup and then once in the Premier League. We have Cardiff, we have West Ham, we got some Europa action kind of in between and nestled all within that. And it's going to be really, really exciting. I just wonder what will change, what will fluctuate a little bit as we look to see how we play against a City or a Liverpool or a Watford. Those top teams in the Premier League right now.
Powerhouse Watford.
You joke, but they are playing some phenomenal football right now.
Yeah, man. Even Chalobah getting some minutes still, so it's good to always see him finding some success, unfortunately, outside Chelsea. All right, let's go ahead and start to wrap this one up with any other thoughts. I have a point here that Ruben has made an appearance, in case anyone missed it. At JARE____. Other than that slight hiccup in the box, RLC looked really influential in such a short time. Do you think he deserves a start? And at 1689 Jedi Matt saying, what do you think of RLC? Sarri spoke highly of him at his press conference yesterday. Made some good runs, lost the ball once in a dangerous spot. Overall, I think he is improving. Amity, seems like every week are talking about Ruben at this point. It's mainly because it's kind of that make or break time. He is staying until January at least, and that has been very public. The guy wants minutes, understandably so. What did you make of the minutes he did get this past weekend?
I think it was good. It was a good time to bring him on, and I think he can have a really strong effect against a tired side like Bournemouth looked. I mean, they just faced a team who had, as we said, 81-7, like 70 at the very least, 76% possession going into that part of the game. Having Loftus-Cheek come on, who's going to want the ball, he's going to want to be effective on it, he's going to want to bring other people in. I think that it is the best time for him to shine. I mean, as Sarri said, I'm quoting him here, he said, I'm very happy with him because in the last 10 days he's improved a lot. I think he'll be important for sure. Starting from September, he'll play every 3 days. So I think that Loftus will be very important and very useful for us. So I think Sarri has plans for him clearly. And whether that means he's going to give him 10, 15 minutes at the end of the game or start him from the beginning, I think that that's good that he has him in his plans. And I don't want him to go in January. I think that this will come to fruition. And I'm not telling everybody that I'm going to be able to see the future here, but if RLC gets these sorts of minutes and he continues to put in the performances like the one he had against Bournemouth, he's going to get his shot. And I think that the fans, the general buzz around Stamford Bridge when he was warming up, when he came on, everybody at Chelsea wants to see him succeed. And these new quotes from Sarri are only kind of a reassurance for the fans, for the players, for him himself. I think he needs to feel that he's important. And if he can kind of produce the sorts of performances that he had for Crystal Palace towards the end of the season, I think that we'll really be able to get the most out of him.
Absolutely. I mean, that is definitely the goal. He kind of has the extra pressure with the academy raised tag as well, but hopefully we can figure it out this time. Obviously, Dan and Nick, we've talked a lot about it. I think we all kind of know where we net out on that. So I will like to push Dan into the man of the match poll from this past match. I don't know. Am I almost disappointed that there's no trolling or nothing funny going on here, Dan? What have you?
It was a great 2-0 win. It was happy. It was sunny days at Stamford Bridge. You can't throw in a little crazy little comment there, especially when you've got some legitimate candidates. So we put in Alonso, Giroud, Hazard, and Pedro. You had the 2 starters who played exceptional, and then 2 impact subs that really changed the game and unlocked Bournemouth for us. Hazard wins with 61% of the vote. Alonso, not closely behind, but in second place at 19%. Pedro at 15%, and Giroud at 5%, rounding it off.
Huh. Nick, hot takes?
No, I think, again, one of the comments I wanted to make in general is I think Kovacic is so good. He could have been a candidate for me. He's playing a role right now that I think, hopefully ends up getting a little bit further forward, ends up doing some of the dirty work, interchanging, assisting maybe a little bit more. But man, his energy, especially the first 60 minutes, was exceptional, and I think he's a key cog moving forward.
Yeah, it is unfortunately probably a huge roadblock to why Ruben won't be getting more minutes this season. But as Amity pointed out, it's a good thing that we have good players in our team, and that is an important thing. All right. Well, as we go into the top 4, at Collier Dave 78 saying, not a question but a comment. I believe that it took us until the 14th of October last year to earn 1 more point than we currently have this year. It is still too early to confirm a title challenge, but a better season than last is almost certain. If we're better than last season, that puts us top 4, which is where we currently stand. Liverpool are in first on 12 points with a +8 goal difference. Chelsea, 12 points +7. This looks old. This looks like an old table, guys, because we have Watford in 3rd, City in 4th, Tottenham in 5th, Bournemouth in 6th. That is how it stands. So Watford, Liverpool, and Chelsea, just as you would expect it. The 3 teams undefeated so far this season. Yep.
Just one little question. Can anybody tell us where United is? Just a question.
So you're gonna have to scroll. Boy. You're gonna have to do a little bit of scrolling, Amity.
Okay.
In the advertising world, they would be below the fold, I believe.
Very true.
United and Arsenal probably the 2 big names hanging out, around the bottom. And I would even point out like how typical, United are up 2-0. Things are going well for Jose, and then the Rashford red card, and then all of a sudden things get a little crazy, and I'm like, of course, like a perfect day out just can't happen for United, right? It just seems to be one of those seasons.
Mourinho season 3, man. It's just written in the stars.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, anything else you guys want to pull out of this match that we maybe have missed? Dan, anything specific to you?
Eddie Howe did a really nice job preparing for this match. I think that they were willing to play a little bit more football for the first 15, 20 minutes before it settled down. They did change some tactics and went a little bit more defensive, but you would expect that from a side that's coming into Stamford Bridge or coming to fight against a top 4, top 6 team would potentially act that way. Even though Bournemouth would be considered a top half of the table team at this point. So, good for Eddie and the work that he's continuing to do. And he's just doing it to prove Nick Verlaine wrong this season. It's all on the anti-Nick train.
I picked Bournemouth to go down. They're not reacting like a team that wants to go down. I agree. I actually thought that they could have had a couple of goals in this match, even though they didn't have a ton of possession or a ton of attacks. They certainly played hard, and they will be a tough team for many in the mid-table to beat. And I think they will probably give your Manchester Uniteds and Arsenals more than they want during the season. So credit to Bournemouth as well.
I'd like to just remark on the fact that there was a great shot. I'm not sure if it was BBC. There's a great shot of Gianfranco Zola and other assistant coaches freaking out. I don't know if it's after Hazard's goal or if it was after Pedro's, but I'm loving seeing Zola like that. And I just like the fact that he's still at the club. I mean, I think that he injects some real club identity. And for what I and others have spoken about and written about Chelsea lacking an identity since the departure of key players, I think having him on the bench, instructing the younger players, being a presence there for those who haven't necessarily been at Chelsea for too long, I think he's incredibly effective. And I just loved seeing him fist pumping on the sideline from this past game. And I think it's a great shot.
Oh, I love that connection and that and passion and enthusiasm that Zola brings. I think that's a great shout that all fans will get behind for sure. The one last thing that we do want to point out, Dan, is, before we wrap this one up, a very great, very awesome, special, feel-good thing that the club did for one of their longest-serving employees at the weekend before the Bournemouth match.
Yeah, a gentleman, Brian, who's worked with the club for over 50, or at this point 50 years, plus probably a day or two here, and he was recognized in the Chelsea briefing room with Steve Atkinson, and then also Bruce Buck came in to hand him a commemorative silver program, essential stand that was essentially the program of the year that he started working for the club. So Vi, one of our friends, had video of it along with a couple other journalists and shared that out, but really touching. And then also Bruce made a joke about how 50 years they've had 27 managers, and that isn't too bad. So yeah, good to see that humor is in a key commodity and available all throughout Stamford Bridge currently this season.
It was a really, really, really awesome to see the club doing stuff like that and taking care of their long-time employees. But I think that'll go ahead and do it for this weekend. Obviously, it's tight margins, right? You're one N'Golo Kante wonder tackle and one Nathan Ake surprising miss away from drawing this match. So, while we got out of there with the 2-0, it is still early days, and there is a lot more to come from this Chelsea team, which is also super exciting. So, as always, again, Amity, thank you so much for jumping on the pod and hanging out with us this afternoon.
Always a pleasure, guys. And thank you for listening. Folks at home, you can feel free to follow me or hate tweets, all that stuff. I love it. Send me your annoyance, send me your agreements, send me all of those things. It's fun to interact, and that's the whole reason that I and others like me come on the podcast with so many followers, and obviously to reach out to Chelsea fans. So thanks for having me again, guys.
Same thing goes with the Carefree Blues pod. Check it out. But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for our match review. We will be back later in the week with our second part, as we always do. And remember, our guest was Matt Law on that, so super excited to be able to push that out. And then after that is a dreaded international break. But we might have something for you on that weekend and that Monday to help you get through it. But you have to stay tuned for part 2 to find out. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.